Good morning, everyone, and welcome to FPC Radio Live. We are here. It's Thursday, and I just lost my screen. I have no idea. I think I'm on camera. Let's hope I'm on camera. Let's hope everything's going just fine. But I will pull that up here in just a minute. But good morning, everyone. We are, about 10 days out from the Super Bowl. We're getting closer and closer, but not quite close enough, John, because we're in that period of just outrageous, ridiculous narrative discussions and back and forth because we're not getting much about the game. It's more or less about what kind of agenda needs to be pushed. And John, we know quite well the agenda that has been being pushed for a while, but has really ramped up here the last couple weeks, and that is Patrick Mahomes' legacy, and not in the appropriate manner, in my opinion, of course. Where I think you can have an appropriate discussion about his legacy, but he's being forced into the GOAT conversation, and we're getting these ridiculous back and forths, including, John, something I hate more than anything, and that is these stupid cross-sport comparisons, and quite often, and we're seeing it quite a bit, they're going to the LeBron, Jordan, Bill Russell debate, which makes absolutely no sense when you actually sit there and think about it, because they continually try to compare Tom Brady to Bill Russell like he played like 60 years ago, when in reality, the appropriate comparison should be Bill Russell and Otto Graham. But then again, at the same time, the whole comparison is, in my opinion, very stupid to begin with, going across sport, because it doesn't really match up. There's different agendas, there's different criteria, there's different history. So we're getting a lot of this, and this is that dead week before we actually get the week of the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to happen anyway. But I'm trying to remember now when Brady was sitting on 3 Super Bowls and the undefeated team played the Giants, and then 4 years later they played the Giants again, and finally he got his 4th Super Bowl against the Seahawks 3 years after that. Was the debate constantly about Brady and Montana? Maybe it was on the periphery, but did it dominate what we were talking about leading into those games? Now, again, social media was nowhere near as big as it is now. I mean, did Twitter even exist in 2007? If it did, it was in its infancy stages.
2009.
2011, a little bit more. Yeah, 2011, it started to get bigger. 2014, and now it's to the point where everyone has a Twitter account. Most people have like some burner account. Everybody bloviates on Twitter with their opinions, and everybody fights back and forth. Like back then, it was a little bit different. So, like I said, if Mahomes wins a week from Sunday, I think he elevates past Manning and Elway. That's quite an accomplishment in 6 years. Then he's on the heels of Montana, and then he's got to wait.
Yeah, and that's the problem that we're getting, is that we can't we just can't differentiate between those two things. And I know my camera, I think, is frozen right now, but rest assured we are getting things worked. I think I hit a bunch of wires in the back of my computer, so it kind of screwed everything up here. But if we could, yeah, it's probably definitely the cats in this situation. But if we could somehow just rein it in, and just and to answer your question, John, no, I don't think the discourse was necessarily centered around Brady becoming the GOAT. Although, again, if that discussion was being had at that time, it was certainly a far more appropriate discussion than what's happening right now. Because again, what's happening right now is you're getting what essentially is just a vastly premature. And I posted this before because people keep talking about pace this, pace that, and pace is great. I mean, pace is great, assuming that everything about pace pans out. And in this case, will it? I don't know, John. I don't know, because from this point on, just imagine, I brought this up probably yesterday, or I can't remember if I did it on or off the air. But just to, let's put it this way, just to match what Brady has done, he is going to have to average over 5,000 yards and 37 touchdowns a season, and for 12 years, which sounds great. And if he does it, congratulations. Obviously that's one hell of an accomplishment, and it'll certainly go a long way in making his case. But the problem is, John, he just came off a season where he threw 27 touchdowns and 4,100 yards. Like, to assume that he's just going to drastically improve that and then do that for the next 12 straight seasons through his 40th year, that's a stretch, and that's not something I'm going to buy into. So when people sit there and say, well, he's on pace, so he's already to go, no, that's not how it works. So again, we get these cheap conversations, and to your point, it could, the conversation would be better if we were talking about Montana, Manning, Elway, because those are appropriate conversations, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Right. 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 Yeah, and look, I mean, that's and that's unfortunately where we're at, because it's like, look, the simple argument is easier in that sense, because, like you said, there is a lot of nuance to it. Like, people are comparing the first 6 years of Mahomes to Brady, and look, I mean, I understand if you're going to do that, and that's certainly something that you can use in Mahomes' favor. But at the same time, if you're going to do that and not accept the, well, of course, Mahomes is going to have better numbers, John. He started his career in a far more pass-friendly league with an offensive-minded head coach with far superior talent around him. That's not a knock on Mahomes. That's just reality. But people surprisingly lean on those. No, look at what he's done the first 6 seasons. It's blown Brady away, and I'm like, yeah, of course it has. Just like Matt Stafford's first 6 seasons probably blow Brady's numbers away. You know what I mean? Like, it's just part of the evolution of the game. So if you're not capable of having a conversation where you don't have to sit there and say, well, it doesn't matter. You don't have to sit there and say, well, Mahomes is a product of that. No, that's not what we're saying. It's just there's nuance to this. There's little pieces of context that doesn't matter. And then we dive into, like, the little things, the game winning drives. Like, look, if you're going to ask me, John, who performed better in their first 3 Super Bowls, well, I say Brady by a landslide. Like even in his 10 Super Bowl games, he does not have one as poor as the one that Mahomes had against the Buccaneers right off the bat. And we know, obviously, assuming Brady doesn't come back and go to more Super Bowls, that's not going to change. So, like, if you want to just look at very surface evidence, I dare I call it evidence, but very surface criteria combined with a lot of assumptions, John. That might be one of my biggest issues is all the assumptions, just assuming, of course, he's going to play through age 40. But John, forget about Brady. The history of the game says otherwise, especially for a guy who uses his legs as well as Mahomes does. Do you think he's going to have the same quote unquote athleticism that he has now when he's 33, 34, 35? No. And when that goes, John, you know what I mean? There's Travis Kelsey's not going to be there. I'm assuming they're not, they may not ever find another Tyreek Hill ever again. They may have some good receivers, some really good units, but they're never going to find another Tyreek Hill. They're never going to have a Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelsey again. I'll tell you that much. So the assumption that, again, based on what we saw last year, 27 touchdowns, 4,100 yards. I'm not saying it's a bad season. It's just, again, trying to hammer home the perspective or the point that it's not that he's a product of his system, but certainly the players around him helped elevate those numbers to a degree that now the expectation or the reality in some people's mind is, yeah, of course he's going to go out and throw 50 touchdowns again. John, he hasn't thrown more than he threw 41 and the rest is 30s and 27 or high 20s. That exactly. Yeah. And he wasn't always a big yardage guy either. Yeah. 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 Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, mhm. Right. No, it isn't. And like I said, the problem though is those in the Mahomes camp don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear it. They think, again, it has to be the first 6 seasons because obviously that's how it's determined. But I mean, it is. It's a far more appropriate conversation, and that's the thing too. Is like there's no guarantee that Mahomes is going to get better with age. And like if I mean, I'm not regressed is again a very negative term, but relative to how he started, John, his angle is pointed downward, John, over the last 5 seasons. Right, exactly. So is he going to be right? And he had a very good career the rest of his career. And that's the point. And John, the ironic thing is you bringing up Dan Marino is, as I've said before, it's Dan Marino's regular season career that separates Brady and Mahomes right now in that department. So, again, the to make these assumptions is one, they're kind of ridiculous, and two, if you look at it, they're not necessarily based in logic. because yes, I mean the 2018 season was phenomenal, John. 50 touchdowns, 5,000 yards, but his touchdown percentage that season was over 2 percentage points higher than his every other season in his career. That's an anomaly, John. That's not a trend. And you look across the board, and it's like, okay, yeah, those numbers are really good, but like I said, I mean, his second highest total over the first 6 seasons is 41 touchdowns, and 20 years ago, 41 touchdowns is pretty impressive. But players do that nowadays. High 30s, low 40s. I mean, that's what we see happen. So again, it's silly to assume that just because, like, I'm not trying to say 2018 is doing a lot of heavy lifting, but in a way it kind of is, because it does inflate the numbers a little bit, especially based on one season versus the other five. Like, I'm not trying to dismiss what he did in 2018. I'm not taking that away from him. I'm just looking at it more logically and saying, well, like I said, he's coming off a season, his second one without Tyreek Hill, a one where Travis Kelce. Look, I don't know what's happened to Travis Kelce in the playoffs, but it was not the same guy during the regular season. He just didn't look the same. Looked a little bit older. Looked banged up earlier in the season. So Travis, yeah, no, true, right. But at the same time, Travis Kelce is 34, going on 35. Like, he's not gonna. This isn't the start of like his prime. He's this. I. Mhm. Yeah. Oh, sure. Well, after a year off, though. Well, hey, why not? So, but I know we have to wrap up here soon. But here's the thing too. It's like, everyone's like, well, he did it without Tyreek Hill last year, and I'm like, great, you had a healthy Juju Smith-Schuster, and I know he's an easy punching bag. You're like, well, look at him now. Well, look, his career, if he's healthy, he produces. His rookie season, Johnny, had 1,400 yards. And he followed that up with a near 1,000-yard season his last time he was healthy. So, and then he had 1,000 yards, well, 900 or whatever with the Chiefs, and again was dynamic enough to create on the field and yards after the catch. Well, the Chiefs didn't have that this year, and like I said, Travis Kelce was a little bit older. We obviously see Tyreek Hill is still Tyreek Hill outside of Kansas City. So what's going to happen next year? All of a sudden, an older Travis Kelce, and assuming they don't break the bank and bring in all-star after all-star, you think he's going to improve by 10 touchdowns and 900 yards and do that for the next 12 years? That's the problem. And I think everyone's just assuming that's going to happen, when I think that is a stretch, certainly at this point, to project that. So, but yeah. Well, maybe we'll do that a little bit more tomorrow and really dive into it. But for now, we're going to say goodbye. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and have a great day. And we'll talk to you tomorrow.